Okay, so greetings everybody, and welcome to our next panel at the Nordic Pavilion, which is entitled, Let's Bridge the Gender Divide in Green Jobs. My name is Lisa Russell. I'm an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker, and I'm the founder of Create 2030, and I work in the gender equality space as a SheDecides Global Champion, and I've also been curating the Women Deliver Arts and Film Festival since 2010. So I like to say that I started my career actually straddling two male-dominated worlds, the UN and media, so I'm very excited to be helping to moderate this dynamic panel. We have a really great, interesting, and diverse set of speakers today. I can't pronounce half of their names, so we're going to do our best. But let's start with, let me grab my notes. We have the Minister for Environment, Energy, and Climate in Iceland. And he's going to pronounce his name.
Guðlaugur Þór Þórðarson.
Yes. We also have Solla, I'm sorry. Excuse me for my cheating notes. I'm sorry, Solla. Solla from Climate-KIC, who I also cannot pronounce her last name.
Yeah, my name is Solla Zophoniasdottir. That's why I go by Solla. Much easier.
Thank you. We also have a representative from the International Labor Organization named Esteban Tromel. Did I get that right? And our last speaker today is Kristen
Björnsson.
Okay, who is the general manager of Running Tide. So really excited to jump into this conversation. I think we're going to start off with a very generic question, which is, how would we all define a green job? What is a green job? And I think we can just go down the list. So you first.
Well, I think the first that springs in mind is that someone who is transforming things into green, so to say, the green transition, everything that connects to that. But then if you go into depth, there is a lot of you can describe a lot of jobs as green, but I think that the first thing that comes in mind is that it's just that, at least for now, which is that you are the ones who are helping us going through the green transformation. But of course, there's a lot of people or jobs who have been there for a very, very long time. I think the Iceland, the first that springs in mind is something connects to green energy, but now we are also coming with carbon capture and all kinds of other things. But I think it's good not to see how this goes, because I think that, and hopefully that a lot of jobs that we don't think may be green now are green and will get greener.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think maybe, so from my perspective, from the work that I'm doing at Climate-KIC, we work on innovation, climate innovation. And I think for us, the green jobs definition is definitely something that needs to be challenged, needs to be opened a little bit more. We have seen that there is a lot of focus on technical skills. And in the work that we are doing in terms of systemic transformations, we are really seeing that there's a need to also include jobs that are contributing to social cohesion. There is a need for jobs in civil society to really be included, because they are also really supporting sustainable and green societies. So to your question, I do think that we need to actually look at all jobs. All jobs should essentially in some way contribute, and that's where the upskilling actually needs to happen. So all jobs should be considered green jobs from my perspective.
I like that.
Yes, well, it's a big question. And I think the report that you produced, the Nordic Council, uses two definitions, one from the ILO and one from the OECD. I will not go into that, but from the angle that I would like to take is there's sometimes the message that every green job is a decent job. And I think that is something that we need to check. I mean, it would be great if every green job is a decent job, but that's not the current reality. And for me, from an ILO perspective, I think that is one of the challenges we need to address.
Yeah, so Running Tide is an ocean carbon removal company. We do carbon removal in the ocean. and I would say that all of our jobs are green, i.e. everybody on the team is trying to contribute to creating a greener future, and that is anything ranging from heavy equipment operators that drive trucks to oceanographers that create oceanography models, to the accountants that issue invoices and carbon count the carbon that we sequester. So to me, it's maybe more about the output, or like what the bigger goal of the job is, than a specific function of the job. So like all of them should in the future be green jobs, I think, if we get to where we need to be in a couple of years.
Oh, excellent. And I've been told that the Nordic Vision 2030 aims to create the Nordic region as the most sustainable region on the planet. Yet only 1 in 3 workers in the green economy is a woman. So why is it important that we have gender parity when it comes to green jobs? Sola?
I mean, I think that for me it's quite simple. We are innovative when we access all minds, and that we include all diversity of approaches and thinking. And no offense to the gentleman sitting here with me, but I think we do see that when women and men work together, there is a diversity of perspectives and different ways of seeing society that leads to innovation. And that is essentially what we need. I think that there is also a need for us to look a little bit into perhaps some of the things that are seen more as soft skills or non-promotable or non-traditional green activities, and really bring that into the definition frame as well. And at the same time, I do think that there is also sometimes even just the language barrier of how we talk about tasks that perhaps alienates women from actually coming into jobs and into activities where they would excel in. But we need to think a little bit about how are we actually defining and engaging and welcoming in, and are there women that are also writing those job descriptions? There are also opening up the language frame for that. That would be maybe my first thought, but curious to hear what my co-panelists here are thinking about it.
Well, first of all, it's just common sense. It's a huge task. We need everyone on board. And are we seriously then take 50% of the population and say, no, not you. I know you have the brains and you have the ideas, and no, but you're not there. It's not a good plan. It's just go like playing a team of football with 5 or 6 players. It's better to have 11. And I'm not going to repeat what you said. I think with diversity, we've seen it again and again and again. And I always use the same example. In Iceland, there has been a lot of changes when it comes to gender equality for last decades. There is no one, and believe me, it's not like we always agree. We do not agree, Icelanders. We always argue. But there is no politicians or anyone who says, we need to go back. This was actually a bad idea. Remember the good old days when there was not that much gender equality. No one. Because it's a win-win game. And look at the studies. There's more gender equality, there's more happiness in the societies. So for me, it's just very simple that we need to be very focused, because there is a work to do to have both men and women aboard when we are taking on this huge task.
Yes, I think I was also surprised by the figure. One assumes that, one would hope, that the future labor markets and the green economy is a significant part of that, would be more gender equal than the current situation. But the reality of the matter is it's not. And that's why it's important to have those statistics that remind us that we cannot just hope that by automatically things will get better. There needs to be deliberate action to make sure that gender equality is there. We need to address the significant general gap that there is in labor market participation, also the stubborn gender wage gap. And we need to make sure, and going back to your issue about, is also the issue of women in leadership in green economy, because I think that will also add a lot to that.
I think this is something I've been thinking about for a long time, is that the green transition is like we're changing everything about the society. And not only will it be impossible to do all the stuff that needs to get done, but it's also not going to be possible to get people along on the ride if we just leave half of the people out, right? So I think like we're only starting to see it now in a little bit in Iceland, as well. Like people are saying like, do we actually need this thing? Like, what about these windmills, yada yada? Like we need to keep everybody engaged from all layers of society in the green jobs, because that's the best way to get everybody aligned to where we're going. At least that's what I think.
Yeah, great points. And I agree with you that, some of these jobs that we are defining as white jobs, have we heard this terminology, white jobs, are transitioning into becoming green jobs. Just as a personal anecdote, I was I did a film in Sierra Leone following this woman who installs solar panels on top of health clinics. And she was incredibly very proficient in her work. She was climbing up the sides of, health centers, and it was the men who are looking at her wondering what she's doing with all those tools, what she's doing on top of the roof, and also wanting to jump in and help her because they assumed that she needed assistance with, carrying things or whatnot. So changing the perception of women in the green job also requires working with the men. Any ideas on how we can educate and change these stereotypes in the men versus, only focusing on gender equality and uplifting women?
Well, I think that we need to learn from best, at least good practices. It's very clear you need role models. I think, again, back to the history of us in Iceland, I think my generation and younger generation, what did really change the perspective? We elected a woman president. She was not only a woman, she was a single mother. And there was actually, at that time, people seriously said, and in the presidential debate, which is something that everyone wants to forget, before election day, the three men who were with her was just saying, sorry, how are you going to do this? You're not only a woman, but you're a single mother. Come on, this is a serious job. Well, fortunately, she got elected. We are very proud of her. I've always been. She did a fantastic job. Of course, I never quite understood this thing because in my little municipality I grew up in, and because there's discussion, women cannot do this and that. But my mother, she worked at the municipality's office, and when she quit, they put her job into two, and two men were hired instead. So I never understood this, that women couldn't do everything that men can do. But I was fortunate in that way. But I think that we need role models. And of course, we also need to be very focused when it comes to policy making on boards and so on. Then we need to have both men and women. But what is really important, and that we need go to the educational system, and we need to encourage, of course, both women or girls and boys, but we need them to, because we really need them, and but we see that when they go to study, then sometimes you have really bias when it comes to gender. So we really need to encourage these young people, especially girls, to go down that path.
If I can just add one thing here, I think that what we are seeing also from our work with startups, with our startup accelerators, with some of our education activities as well, is that we also have very narrow definitions of what an entrepreneur looks like, what a successful entrepreneur, and especially also in the climate arena and in the climate space as well. And I think that what we consistently see is that women that are climate entrepreneurs, they don't define themselves as climate entrepreneurs because, to your point, the role models, they look different. And I think that that is, again, coming back to many of the excellent climate leaders and climate entrepreneurs and really women of power and leadership that I'm seeing in this space, they define themselves as social entrepreneurs. And that, I think, is, we need to start somehow flexing a little bit of muscle of not creating these constant categories that are you in this category or in this category. The climate challenges and the complexity of the climate challenges means that if you're a social entrepreneur, you're a climate entrepreneur. So there is something, like you're saying, around role modeling. There is also, and of course there is also empowerment. Women also do need to be more bold, and we need to encourage each other to really think that no one actually really gives you power. You take it. And I think that in that way, in that entrepreneurial space, it's also up to us women that work in these climate spaces to show up and be there. And I know that for many of the conversations here around green jobs, women, they don't step up to these panels. They don't step up to the discussion. So we need them to be bolder as well.
And why do you, just to follow up on that, why do you think that is? Why do you think women don't step up to these conversations and these opportunities?
I think there absolutely is both a new generation, and I think there are absolutely more and more women that are maybe realizing about not only the potential, but actually the work that they are driving. I do think that we need to step out of the women for women bubble and actually be with together. All of us. We need more encouragement from men. We need to also define together what it means. And I have to say, I am also seeing, and this also comes from many of the younger generations of entrepreneurs and others, that they are actually also incredibly open to supporting female leadership. This we need to take on as well. So it's also up for us as women to make sure that we are not getting stuck in the frame of women climate leaders. We need to also remember that it's a leadership space that we, all of us, need to be invited to. So that's where my skepticism sometimes comes around creating lots of women forums. I think they're necessary, but let's remember that we need to learn from one another. Men need to be invited into the gender space as well.
Absolutely. Did you?
Yeah, I mean, I must say I'm hopeful, as you were saying, about younger people. I think the attitude is different. But one of the things that I was struck in the publication that you've launched is this fact that while women entrepreneurs in this area are more successful and the return on investment is higher, they are have much less access to finance. No? And who are the decision makers? Well, probably men. Yeah, or majority men. So I think there's something wrong there which needs to be addressed.
Just, from my company, like a big, the biggest gender difference depends on maybe the function of the work that it is. Like I said earlier, like the oceanographers are mostly female, while all the ocean scientists are not mostly, but it's a bigger portion of women in the ocean sciences, while the heavy equipment operators are all only men. So I think for us and for other companies that are in the doing kind of moving things around in big machines, part of the game, or linking up, putting up solar panels, that kind of stuff, I think it's important to make sure that you're working towards a culture that allows women to be a part of it, because it's at least the story goes that it might not be the most welcoming culture in the more heavy equipment operating side of the world, even though it might be.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's the same challenges we have just in the STEM community in general. Women embracing science, technology, engineering, mathematics, MS mathematics. So I'm wondering if it's the same barriers to that as well. So I'm going to jump to a different question. We're talking about green transition, the green transition. How can we use the green transition to decrease the gender segregation in the labor market?
Well, I think one of the issues that we're working in the ILO is the issue of care, the care economy. Now, there's this discussion whether care jobs are green jobs or not, I don't go into that discussion. But I think what is clear is that investment in the care economy is a transformation of the role of women in the labor market, both by allowing women to get into the labor markets, including the green economy, as well as better paid care jobs, and of course also an issue there of more men getting into those jobs. Now, so for me, the care economy, investment in the care economy is a game changer of the role of women, and I think has a similar impact on the green economy than in all other parts of the economy.
Maybe to add a little bit on that, and I'll return to my previous point as well. We need to recognize many of the tasks and many of the things that women are actually doing that are now considered non-promotable tasks are not necessarily seen as tasks of leadership or not tasks of actually holding. And I think this is actually quite rampant in the care sector. And then returning back to the entrepreneurship point here as well. And what you were referring to in terms of how it can be difficult for women also to get investment, to move their enterprises. This is also because many times women, they don't subscribe to the traditional growth path of how enterprise should grow. They want to perhaps have a different lifestyle. And this is as well, we see this in climate leadership and in leadership in general. Women get to a certain point in leadership, they could go further, but they are simply not interested in leading in the structures that we have. So this is really also a structural challenge in terms of, can you be a high-level leader in the climate arena and also work in a way that is value-based? And I think that this is one of the things that we need to also look at. How are we creating, you could say, these glass ceilings that keep on being referred, but also these handbrakes in terms of, I can say for myself, I also do want to have back to what you were saying, is it a decent job? Are climate leadership jobs, are they decent? Are they value-based? That's essentially what we're all working towards. So working in these sectors needs to also represent the good life that we are not wanting only the future generation. We want the good life now. So I think this is really important.
Absolutely. Any thoughts?
I think there is no reason to add to this. I totally agree with Solla.
Yeah, I was also going to say, you know, in my world, we focus on climate communications. And I would argue the same thing that you just said, in that people have constantly asked me, well, why would we want more artists in this space? Why artists don't want to stop what they're doing to take on a leadership position and run things? Well, maybe it's because the system doesn't work the way it stands, the way we work. Maybe we don't need to be working 9 to 5. Maybe our lifestyle and our work, structure just looks different. But to claim that we cannot be climate leaders in the work that we do is not due to our lack of ability, but a lack of a structure that accepts our lifestyles. So, yeah. All right. How do we make sure that the green transition does not create new winners and losers in the labor market?
Well, I find it interesting. One of the things that was put in front of us before this panel is brown jobs. Mm-hmm. I'm always learning some new things, but that's polluting jobs, brown jobs. And I think we really need to be focused also, and this all connects, just transition. And it's really important, and we have already seen, just like the yellow vest in France and so on, where you have losers who are at least feel like that they are losing. So we need to be focused on how the brown jobs will be green jobs. It's not only that you are holding a brown job and by your life is, as you know, it is over, and that's something we really need to focus on. So I think that everything we do, then just transition or climate justice, if you like, is something that we also need to be very focused on. But actually, that is mostly men who held brown jobs. But it's as Solla is saying, we need to do this together. Gender equality is a win-win game. But it also means that we need also think of then both men and women. And I see a clear danger there that we could say these old-fashioned jobs. To be honest, we are trying to get rid of them. But there can also be winners. If you are a lorry driver, you can be a green lorry driver. That is one of the things that you can do. Just to put as a very, very simple example. But just transition is something that we need to be very focused on.
Yeah, I agree. And I just wanted to add on that when we talk about, in the work that we do, at least for me, when I work at the United Nations, there's a lot of power dynamics that are in play. And I think that when you talk about making systemic changes and you're introducing, for example, more women, more young people, more people of color into positions of leadership, we have to also think, well, we are displacing maybe the cis white men who've dominated this space and who have livelihoods, and we can't just oust them without thinking about where their livelihoods are going. So I would argue the same thing with the brown jobs. We can't just expect these people who've built livelihoods to just quickly transition into a whole new economy, learn new skills, take time off, lose income. I think that the conversation needs to be more nuanced and a little bit more in depth when we're talking about, well, to me, it's power, right? We're transitioning power, and what does that look like, and how can we ensure that the people we are displacing from power can transition, that they want to transition. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, yeah, I just kind of went on a tangent, but any thoughts about that?
Just a bit more on that. I mean, I think we need to look at it from an individual point of view. It's about what you were saying. I mean, if people are about to lose their job, we need to make investments in reskilling, upskilling, et cetera, et cetera. But I think we also then need to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture, I mean, in 10 years' time, is the economy more gender equal? Are there more persons with disabilities, including women with disabilities, in the labor market? We also need to make that macro analysis, no? And I think, and hopefully, in the macro figures, there will always be some individual people that, for whatever reasons, will not be able to make it because they live in the wrong area. It's really difficult to find them a job there, et cetera, et cetera. But I think we also need to look at the bigger statistics. I mean, how are we going to? Where are we going? Where's where are the statistics going? Are we going in the right direction from a macro point of view or not? And I think that's also important.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe just one thought is that for many of these job categories, we're moving people, or people will move from doing a thing that supports fossil fuels into doing a very similar thing that supports carbon capture and storage, because it's pipes, it's plumbing, it's technology. And so I think one thing to be mindful about, and I don't have a solution, is that currently many of those skill sets are very male heavy. So like unless we do something about having them less male heavy, like in the new version where everybody is working on direct air capture and storage and not pumping fossil fuels from the ground, they will still be very male heavy. So I think it's I think we need to be mindful about that. A lot of this reskilling will be kind of horizontal movement and not completely reinventing stuff. The green lorry jobs will probably still be heavily male green lorry drivers, even though they're green now.
Maybe just to add on here, I think we also need to be okay with that there perhaps are not 50-50 equality in terms of gender across all categories. I think that that's not necessarily the answer. I think that striving to percentages, I think it comes back to what you so beautifully put in the beginning, is that are we offering decent jobs? Are we offering jobs that people feel give them meaning, that give value to add to their lives? And I think here comes a very important point in terms of reskilling, etc. We cannot ignore culture and identity when we talk about jobs as well. And I think that is then the stories and the narratives of where some of the jobs come from, the proudness of those that have, in some cases, many, maybe generations that have been working in similar fields of jobs. We cannot only move things into, now we're offering green jobs. We have to also focus in on what's the narrative, what's the proudness that we are, what's the cultural aspect of these jobs. And this is what we see as well in some of the coal regions that we have also been working with in Climate-KIC across Poland. It's not enough to say we're going to now move into a new industry. There's a lot of legacy, there's a lot of identity, and there's a lot of proudness of how these jobs have sustained lives. We need to work on cultural basis as well.
If I may, I think the word could also be hope. I mean, because we talk about, usually when we talk climate, we talk about macro, in the big picture. But then it comes to the individuals. And if you feel threatened, not that you disagree with fighting climate change, but you're saying, wow, my life is over as I know it, that can be a serious problem. So, but I think we all agree here, this is something, and we speak so much about it, which says to me that we are, at least at this panel, and here we are much aware of the challenge, which need to be addressed.
Yeah, and I would also say, again, bringing it a little bit back to my world, because I can speak coherently about that. I got invited by the government of UAE to speak at the World Conference on Creative Economy during Expo 2020. And it was interesting to me because they are trying to position Dubai as the creative capital of the world. And I thought, why are they interested in doing that? And I said, aha, like they're gonna have to transition out of being an oil-based economy, and where are they gonna go? And the creative economy is considered one of the fastest growing economies in the world. So yeah, I just found that, just an interesting observation that we're not even just talking about the individuals transitioning, we're talking about regions who have been, developing their development based on an oil-based economy. Where are they going to go? But yeah, we can go down the rabbit hole in that way. Yeah.
I think one thing to add here as well, when we're talking about creation of new types of jobs and accessibility, I think that there's also a lack of imagination, actually, in general. We are creating the jobs of the future based upon how jobs have looked. We are, and I think so. There are some incredibly inspirational examples of people that have managed to look at jobs and look at who is in those types of jobs and create something completely new. And I think one example from Denmark, a father of a autistic, he had a son that was autistic. He had a lot of worries about his son never being employable. And he created a company that is actually thriving. It's called The Specialists. And it is really harnessing the ability that that people that are on the autistic spectrum have for incredibly good skills around data recognition, how quick they are. So we do need to also across, and this I think really holds hands with the definitions of green jobs, new jobs, the new definition of work in general. How might we rethink what a job is and who can do what? And then let alone the power shifts that was mentioned here before as well. We sit on this stage, you're here in the audience. How can we actually create different ways of relating to one another where we are not constantly in hierarchy of what is a valuable job and what is not? All jobs should be considered valuable. And this is a mindset shift that needs to happen.
No, and it reminds me of this company, I think they're called Air Inc. Have you heard of them? So this innovator, this entrepreneur, put a cone on the back of, I don't know what they call them in India. In Kenya, they call them tuk-tuks, the three-wheeled things, and collected the exhaust that came out of the tuk-tuks, and then scraped that and actually made artistic pencils from that and hired the tuk-tuk drivers to help collect that. So they were essentially supplementing their income by having them help collect this carbon exhaust and creating and repurposing them. But I think that maybe if anybody, maybe we can open up questions to the audience. Do we have time? I don't know what the time count is. 10 minutes? Yes. Sure. Hello.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. My name is Nancy Omolo, and I'm from Kenya, and I'm a gender specialist. This is a very interesting discussion, And this week I attended one of the side events, and it was very interesting. It was about the solar, and this time it was the women who are installing these solars, and there are all these pictures of young women. This organization, I asked her, oh, just a few months ago, we're training all these electricians who can repair the solar panels, and apparently all of them were men. And most of the time, women have been involved in the marketing of the solar panels. But here was an organization based in Gambia who was training the women. So in the morning, the women had to go to the market till around 1. Then in the afternoon, they were now going to learn how to repair the solars. Then after learning, now they're going back and training other women. And one of the woman farmers came and she says, what a man can do, a woman can do better. So that was very interesting. Then just before that, I was doing some research for the Africa Capacity Building Foundation, which is the capacity building arm of the Africa Union. So I went to Benin, Ethiopia, Congo, Brazzaville, and I was also supporting an institution in Kenya on gender diversity and inclusion. And actually, when we unpackaged, we said that an organization, future jobs, we have to have all these people. You have to have people living with disability. You have to have younger people. You have to have people of color. But then one of the things we are saying, when you bring in, for example, someone living with disability, you have to ensure that your office is suitable for the person. When you're going to have meetings, you have to ensure that you have to book hotels with the facilities to accommodate the person. At the airport also, you have to inform them early so that they prepare all those things. And when you have someone living with autism, you also have to train your staff on how to deal with that person. You cannot be in a noisy place then calling the person living with autism. You cannot have an office which is not airy and you expect to have someone living with autism. So one of the things we're saying that these things, they come with additional cost, which many institutions do not, by the time they say we want, they do not consider that you're going to train these people, you're going to invest in the infrastructure. So that additional cost, how do you have it? If you're going to have young women and they're going to have young families, because many research institutions working on climate change, agenda, and agriculture saying that they have the problem of attracting senior researchers. But one thing, if I'm a senior researcher, I have a young child, then you're not going to give me off to go and take care of my child. If I have to travel to another country and you're not going to give me the facility to travel with my child and you may be able to hire a nanny, then why would I be interested in working for you? So one of the things I was telling them, are you making your, is the environment suitable for young women to come and work with you? Thank you.
Well, quickly on the disability part, because that's my area of expertise. I just attended an event today in the green zone of a new network that's been established here in UAE, and it's amazing to see the level of interest in the private sector to employ persons with disabilities, because they've realized that there's a clear return on investment. It leads to better products and services. It leads to better staff motivation. It leads to better. It's expanding the talent pool and all that. It comes sometimes with some costs, but the companies that are doing it, and we also have we coordinate in the ILO a global business and disability network. All those companies that perhaps started with this issue because of legal obligations, they all are now extremely committed to the employment of persons with disabilities, including persons with autism or neurodiversity, which is also now a new context. So I think also in that area, things are changing quite dramatically. The question for me, and that's why I'm here at COP28, is if this new green economy will be more not only more gender responsive or transformative, but will also be more disability inclusive. And I would say not automatically. We need to do something. And the example you gave of access of women to the solar skills is a good example. You need to do something deliberate for the male dominance not to be replicated.
I couldn't agree more with what you're saying here. I think that the point that you're making here is in terms of extra costs that is the mindset shift that we need to have. I think that we are also transitioning into hopefully being aware of seeing life and world and the things that are as they are. Our approach to work in general is an incredibly linear approach where we assume that we can all leave our children and the complexity of whatever behind and fully show up for work. I think even just COVID has given us a really good opportunity of window in many countries into one another's lives and see that there's actually quite a messy situation for all of us there. I think here, this is the investment that government countries need to make, and we need to be more transparent and honest with what is that the professional and the personal is the same, and that these extra costs they've always been there. They have just been held in different ways. So it's time to bring them to the foreground. And I don't think that that is necessarily something that only women will benefit from, or only people with disabilities will benefit from. There are, across the Nordic regions, men want to spend time with their children. So changing the job markets, that will also help in this regard. And I do think that accessibility for women, now talking maybe outside of the Nordic regions for different careers and different jobs, it's actually also bringing light to some of the systemic problems that we have. We can reskill women, but if we don't make sure that they are then safe at work, then we need to invest in this infrastructure.
Just in short, transition isn't free, but it's a really good investment. You pointed out a good example of that, but then the whole green transition is all about that.
Excellent. Time check, 5 minutes. Okay. Anybody else with a question from the audience? Anyone? 4 minutes.
It's more of an observation than a question, but I'd just like to say that I'm here with the Icelandic delegation, so it's thanks to the minister here that I'm here, so thank you for that. But I lived in Munich, and this past Halloween, we had some children who arrived at the door, and they knocked at the door, and the little boys and little girls, and the little girls were, stepping to the side, and the little boys were in front, and they were trying to get all the best sweets, right? And I think that that's where it starts. We start with the little girls feeling confident that they can be the ones to come forward and pick and choose what they want. And that will give them the motivation to move, into these roles that they don't know anything about, because they're only, the boys are being spoken to for the most part. So it's not that we want them to be boys, they're girls, and they should take those skills forward. But we want the girls to know that they can.
Yeah, great point. Great point.
Maybe then adding to that, and I agree, but it goes both ways in terms of that. And just speaking from my own experience, my son is 7 years old, and he is the most vulnerable, emotional person that I have ever met in my life, and I know where it comes from. I think we also, with allowing boys also into that space, we give women and we give girls the ability. So we have to be mindful of that. And I think that that's one of the things that I would also point in terms of green jobs, in terms of this discussion that we're having. I think across the Nordic countries, it's women who is they are really powering through universities. They are really taking spaces there, and we need to also tend to nurture and make sure that this is about the whole. It's about the holistic. It's about giving everyone space to be individuals. And I think I think in the Nordics, we are in a prime position to really hold this and role model this across the field.
I just want to throw in one more idea, which is, we're looking in the ILO often into the gender wage gap, a very stubborn thing. But then we're also looking into the motherhood gap. But we don't have a fatherhood gap. What does it mean? No? It means that we men, when we have children, we go on with life because we expect our partners to deal with that. No? And I think what I liked from what you were saying is, because it's not only the green jobs and the green skills and all that, which is very important, but at the same time, hopefully this new green economy is also a change in lifestyle. No? And change in lifestyle for women and men, it comes a bit late for me, unfortunately. But I hope that younger men will exactly what you said, will enjoy spending also a significant amount of your time with their children or outside work, and not just having this obsession with work that at least in my generation we had, and which led then to significant differences between women and men.
Okay, so I think we're going to wrap it up maybe with one last thought on maybe what changes would we like to see heading into COP29 when it comes to gender and gender divide and green jobs?
Well, we politicians, we can talk, all day. So I'm trying to behave. I hope I succeeded in some way. Well, I think that we were discussing both when the culture part, the art part, and the gender equality is maybe not the first thing that springs in mind when people think about climate. Yeah. Well, I hope that next year that will not be the case. I think that we, of course, take the discussion, but everyone is aware of it. So it's not about if, it's how we're gonna do it. If that happens next year, then I think that we have made quite a bit difference.
I think for me, what I would wish for, specifically in relation to this discussion, is that we really commit to a broader definition of green jobs, and that we change, for the love of God, we change the definition of soft skills into something else. Because collaboration and dialogue and sticking to one another in difficult conversations, I think there's nothing soft about it. And I really feel like that needs to change.
Yeah, one of the discussions that's happening at this COP is a Just Transition work program. The discussion is going a bit in circle right now, and I would definitely like to see that the final outcome of that discussion makes explicit reference both to gender responsiveness, gender transformative, but also to the inclusion of other vulnerable groups, including persons with disabilities.
Yeah, I think being fully aware of how important the full inclusivity is to actually making the action that we need. Because we can talk a lot here, and that's what mostly happens in these events, is talk, but then once you want to do the thing in the ground, we need to be very aware of that everybody needs to be involved.
Yeah, great point. I personally would love to see, I know there's been some controversy over the photograph of the leadership of COP28 being dominated by men. Does anybody know, there was this statistic, there were only so many women and compared to, do you know what I'm talking about? That photograph, that we have gender parity in that leadership position. So I think with that said, please give a round of applause to our wonderful panelists. Thank you all so much. Great conversation. Please stick around for the reception I believe we're having. It's in the Spanish pavilion, better. Sorry. And thank you so much, and hopefully you'll visit the Nordic Pavilion in the next few days. They're here until the 11th? 11th. All right, thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, guys.